Hello and welcome to eChinese Learning Pod, your go-to podcast for learning Chinese and exploring Chinese culture. To protect speakers' privacy and enhance audio quality, some or all voices in this episode are created with AI assistance.
You are sitting at a busy table in a restaurant in Beijing. The air is thick with the smell of garlic and soy sauce, and the ambient noise of, like, a dozen overlapping conversations is just buzzing around you.
Oh, I can picture it perfectly.
Right. So you have been studying Mandarin Chinese for 6 months. You have your flashcards memorized. You confidently make eye contact with the waiter, intent on ordering a simple plate of dumplings.
You're ready to go.
Exactly. You open your mouth, clearly articulating the phrase you practiced.
我想要睡觉.
But instead of writing down your order, the waiter stops, looks at you in utter bewilderment, and the entire table goes dead silent. Because of a micro variation in the pitch of your voice, you didn't just ask for dumplings, you just firmly announced to the entire restaurant, I want to sleep.
Wow. Yeah, that is the ultimate nightmare scenario for anyone trying to acquire a new skill.
It really is.
The gap between theoretical knowledge and practical execution is rarely as wide or, as publicly humiliating as it is in language learning.
Definitely. And welcome to today's deep dive, where we are unpacking exactly why that happens.
Right. The source material we are examining today breaks down exactly why these specific catastrophic miscommunications happen to so many people.
And it's a really fascinating, highly relatable look at the deepest learning holes people fall into when studying Chinese.
Yeah, and more importantly, it provides a blueprint for escaping the artificial trap of textbooks so you can, actually communicate in the real world.
So if you've ever felt overwhelmed learning a new skill or had that panic-inducing moment where you realized what you said wasn't what you meant at all, this deep dive is for you. Okay, let's unpack this. Making these mistakes is like walking into a restaurant trying to order an appetizer and accidentally demanding a nap and a whole raw bird.
Yeah, the whole raw bird is a very real trap, too.
Right. So if I know the vocabulary word for dumpling and I know the word for sleep, why does my brain swap them at the exact moment I open my mouth? Is my brain just lagging under the pressure?
Well, what's fascinating here is that everyone messes up when learning Chinese like this. It is far more insidious than a simple lag, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your brain is actively discarding the most critical piece of information in the sentence. But these aren't just random errors. They are highly specific structural traps.
Structural traps.
Exactly. Let's look at the actual neurological mechanics at play here. Chinese is a tonal language. So the same exact syllable, whether your voice goes up, down, stays flat, or dips, means entirely different things.
Right, the 4 tones.
Yes. But to an adult beginner, particularly a native English speaker, the brain hasn't been wired to hear pitch as a fundamental component of a word's definition.
Wait, if the acoustic data is hitting my eardrum, how can my brain just not hear it? I mean, I can hear when someone is singing off key. I can hear pitch.
You hear the pitch, sure, but your brain miscategorizes its purpose. During childhood language acquisition, the brain undergoes this process of neural pruning.
Neural pruning, like cutting back branches.
Yeah. Exactly like that. It optimizes itself for the sounds of its native language and literally deletes the pathways for phonetic contrasts it doesn't need.
Oh, wow.
So in English, pitch is used for intonation. It tells you if someone is being sarcastic, if they're asking a question, or, if they're angry. It indicates emotion.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Like really versus really.
Right. But in Mandarin, pitch dictates the literal dictionary definition of the word. So when that audio hits your eardrum, your English-trained brain runs it through an acoustic filter.
It filters it out.
It strips away the tonal data, categorizing it as emotional context, leaving you with only the consonant and vowel sounds.
That is wild.
Yeah, so without the tone,
水饺
for dumplings and
睡觉
for sleep are acoustically identical to you. Your brain is applying the rules of your native language to a completely different acoustic environment.
That is fascinating. So my brain is essentially stripping the metadata out of the file before it even reaches my conscious awareness. It thinks it's doing me a favor by ignoring the tone.
Yes, exactly. It thinks it's helping. And that automatic filtering process is incredibly difficult to bypass without targeted intervention.
Which leads us to the other major pitfall from the source. The phrasing trap.
Oh, the chicken incident. Yeah. The source text brings up another classic phrasing trap that operates on a similar level of structural interference.
Yeah, where you try to politely ask for 1 portion of chicken, please.
一份鸡肉.
But the way you structure the request accidentally demands, I want a whole chicken.
我要一只鸡.
It's such a classic mistake.
I read that and immediately wondered, like, how do you escalate from a plate of diced meat to demanding an entire farmyard animal?
Yeah.
How does the structure cause that specific of a disaster?
It comes down to a grammatical trap involving measure words or classifiers. In English, you can just say a chicken. The noun is flexible.
Right. A chicken, some chicken.
But Chinese requires a specific classifier depending on the shape, type, or state of the object. It forces the speaker to categorize reality before they speak.
Categorize reality. That sounds intense.
It kind of is.
一份
Specifically implies a portion or a divided serving on a plate. But
一只
is the classifier used for certain whole animals or objects of a specific shape.
Ah, okay. I see where this is going.
Yeah, so when a learner tries to piece a sentence together word by word from an English thought, they often grab the wrong structural pillar. You think you are just pointing at a menu item, but the grammatical classifier you deploy accidentally scales up the fundamental unit of measurement.
It's like walking into a bakery and asking for a flock of bread instead of a loaf.
Yeah.
Like, the noun is right, but the container you put it in completely breaks reality.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, and it leads directly into the most painfully real scenario outlined in our source text, the listening comprehension blackout.
Oh man, the blackout. This is so relatable.
A learner studies for months, memorizes thousands of flashcards, and finally engages in a real conversation. The native speaker hits them with a completely normal, everyday sentence, and the learner's brain entirely short-circuits.
Just totally shuts down.
They only process the very first two words. Ni hao? Hello? After that, nothing. Just static.
I have experienced that exact phenomenon, and the immediate internal assumption is always, I am terrible at this. I am simply not smart enough to learn this.
Which is such a bummer because it's not true at all.
Right. The text explicitly shifts the blame away from the learner. It asserts that making these mistakes, or freezing up entirely, is not a symptom of laziness.
No, not at all. The author mounts a very sharp critique of traditional learning tools here, specifically textbooks and mainstream language apps.
The blackout isn't a failure of intelligence, right?
Exactly. It is a textbook example of cognitive overload caused by poor training methods. When you study in the isolated, controlled environment of an app, you process language sequentially.
Like one word at a time.
Right. You look at a flashcard, you decode it, you move to the next. But real-world speech doesn't have spaces between the words. It is a continuous, rapid stream of sound.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If these textbooks and apps are designed by language professionals, how do they completely miss the mark on teaching real-life speed and that native feel?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about the gap between sterile audio and messy reality. You see, curriculum designers believe they need to isolate variables to teach effectively.
So they artificially clean it up.
Exactly. They record audio in soundproof studios. They hire voice actors who enunciate every single syllable with perfect, exaggerated clarity.
And they slow it way down.
They artificially slow the pace down to a crawl so the learner can consciously parse the grammar. It creates a false sense of fluency.
But hold on, isn't that sterile environment necessary at the beginning? Like if you take someone on day one and just throw messy, high-speed, real-world audio at them, won't they just get incredibly frustrated and quit?
Well, you do need scaffolding, definitely. But the problem is that apps and textbooks never take the training wheels off. They trap you in that sterile laboratory environment indefinitely.
It sounds like training for a marathon exclusively by running on a treadmill in a climate-controlled gym. If you run on a perfectly flat surface at exactly 5 miles per hour for 6 months, your heart might get stronger, but your stabilizing muscles, like your ankles and knees, are completely unprepared for uneven terrain.
That's a great analogy.
The second you step onto a rocky trail in the real world, you snap your ankle.
And the brain's working memory acts just like those stabilizing muscles. We have a phonological loop in our working memory that holds about 2 to 3 seconds of audio.
Okay, so a very short buffer.
Right. When an app-trained brain hears a real, rapid sentence, it latches onto the first recognizable sound, which is usually ni hao. It takes the brain a full second to map that sound, translate it, and process it.
Because it's used to that slow treadmill speed.
Exactly. But the native speaker hasn't stopped. While the learner's brain is busy processing hello, the speaker has already delivered 15 more syllables.
Oh, wow. So it just crashes?
The audio buffer overloads. New data overwrites the old data before it can be parsed, and the system crashes. That is the ni hao blackout. The text argues that textbooks completely fail to teach how fast real Chinese is actually spoken.
That reframes the entire problem. It isn't that my brain is slow. It's that my brain's processing speed was calibrated to a lie.
A very well-intentioned lie, but a lie nonetheless.
The app calibrated my ear to a frequency of clarity that simply does not exist in human conversation. Like, native speakers drop syllables, blend words together, they use slang.
And that leads to the second major blind spot of traditional tools that the text points out, pragmatics.
Right, the social stuff.
Textbooks do not warn learners about which words accidentally sound rude in real life. They teach you that a certain Chinese word translates directly to a specific English word, but they strip away the entire cultural context.
Let's talk about the trail running hazard.
Yeah.
How does a grammatically correct word become offensive? Because, if I use the right vocabulary and the right tone, shouldn't the message be perfectly received?
Not if you ignore the social payload of the word. Pragmatics is the study of how context influences meaning.
Okay.
A textbook will give you a technically correct sentence, but it won't tell you that this particular phrasing is only socially acceptable when, say, an elder is speaking to a child.
Oh, yikes. So you could sound super condescending without knowing it.
Exactly. Or it won't warn you that using a specific pronoun with a stranger sounds aggressively demanding rather than politely requesting.
So the grammar is fine, but the vibe is completely wrong.
You might execute the mechanics of Chapter 4 perfectly, but the cultural nuance of when to deploy that sentence is entirely missing. That is why saying the technically right word can still feel completely unnatural or outright offensive to a native speaker.
So the app teaches you the mechanics of the language,
Yeah,
but it completely ignores the music of the culture.
that's a beautiful way to put it, yeah.
Okay, so if the mainstream tools are essentially setting us up to fail, if they are calibrating our processing speed to a fake, slow-motion reality and leaving out the cultural context so we accidentally insult our waiters, what is the alternative?
Well, the source text issues a pretty strong mandate to stop learning Chinese the awkward way.
But if I'm stuck between an app that lies to me and a restaurant where I'm accidentally ordering a nap, I need a bridge. What is the fix?
The text proposes a complete pivot away from passive consumption. It advocates for active, systematic practice rooted entirely in real-life situations.
Which means getting out of the app.
Exactly. This requires engaging in a three-step cycle that forces the brain to adapt speaking, making mistakes, and being corrected.
Okay, but honestly, that sounds like a recipe for constant daily anxiety. Who wants to purposefully go out and fail over and over again?
Most people don't, which is why they stick to the apps.
Right, like why can't I just get better software? Surely there is an AI tool that can listen to my pronunciation and correct me in the privacy of my living room without the public humiliation.
Software can correct your pitch, sure, but it cannot simulate the emotional weight and spontaneous turbulence of a real human interaction.
It doesn't have that messy reality.
No, it doesn't. The text places a massive premium on the act of making embarrassing mistakes because it views those mistakes as the ultimate diagnostic tool.
Because an AI doesn't care if you insult it.
Exactly. A human being will react, and that reaction provides invaluable contextual data. By analyzing exactly how you messed up in a real interaction like, did you use the wrong measure word, did you mess up the tone, or did you just freeze up completely? You can determine the exact specific skill you need to prioritize next.
So what does this all mean? It sounds like mastering Chinese is less like memorizing a dictionary and more like going to a sports coach or a physical therapist.
That is a very apt comparison.
You can't just read about swimming. You need a personalized diagnostic lesson to pinpoint exactly where your form is failing so you don't sink.
Yes, that analogy perfectly captures the course of utilizing a full system built around a one-on-one diagnostic lesson tailored specifically to the individual.
Because everyone makes different mistakes.
Right. That is the only effective way to bridge the gap from can't speak to speaking confidently. Every single learner has a different set of blind spots.
So one person might struggle with tones, while another might be great at tones but terrible at grammar.
Exactly. One person's brain might struggle specifically with the acoustic filtering of tones, while another person might be a tone master but absolutely fall apart when trying to construct a sentence using classifiers.
And a generic app gives the same curriculum to a million people.
Exactly. But a diagnostic approach looks at your unique pattern of failure and builds the bridge starting from exactly where you are standing.
Which requires a completely different mindset regarding failure itself.
Yeah.
If I have to provide my coach with a unique pattern of failure, I have to be willing to fail loudly and clearly.
And this raises an important question, right? How do we view failure? Because failing loudly is incredibly difficult to do. It runs counter to a decade or more of conditioning.
Oh, absolutely. School teaches us to hide our mistakes.
Think about traditional education systems. A mistake is a deduction. It is a red mark on a test. It lowers your grade, and by extension, your perceived value as a student.
We are conditioned from a very young age to avoid making mistakes at all costs. The system teaches us to stay silent unless we are 100% certain we have the correct answer.
And the physiological stress response to making a mistake is very real. Your heart rate goes up, you sweat.
But staying silent until you are perfect is the exact opposite of what you need to do to acquire a complex physical or cognitive skill like a language. You can't quietly become fluent.
No, you can't. The source's philosophy requires flipping that educational trauma entirely on its head. It argues that making and analyzing an embarrassing mistake isn't a setback.
It's just data.
It is the literal data you need to build your personalized system for fluency. Without the mistake, there is no data. Without the data, there is no diagnostic correction.
And without the correction, you're just wandering in the dark.
Yep. Overly confident in your sterile textbook knowledge until reality hits you in the face and you accidentally order a whole chicken. The text demands that learners treat their mistakes as a gold mine rather than a source of shame.
I really appreciate how that reframes the concept of embarrassment. You have to actively generate the data by being brave enough to sound foolish.
It's a vulnerable process.
It is, but it takes the pressure off achieving perfection and places the focus entirely on the process of iteration. You speak, you fail, you get corrected, you improve. It turns the humiliation into a tool.
And we shouldn't underestimate the neurobiological power of that humiliation either. The text hints at this by emphasizing the value of your funniest or most embarrassing mistakes.
Oh, because emotion ties to memory.
Exactly. When a native speaker corrects your accidental demand for a nap, you share a laugh. There is an emotional spike. That emotionally salient event triggers the release of dopamine and adrenaline, which dramatically increases neuroplasticity.
So your brain is primed to learn in that exact moment.
Yes. The emotional resonance of that embarrassing moment will cement the correct tonal pronunciation of
睡觉
in your brain far faster and deeper than staring at a digital flashcard for 3 hours. The embarrassment itself acts as a powerful mnemonic device.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, you will never, ever forget the word for dumpling after an entire restaurant laughs with you about wanting to sleep in your soup.
Never.
It burns into your memory because it's no longer just a vocabulary word. It has become a lived experience. It's a story.
And transitioning language from abstract data into lived experience is the ultimate goal of the one-on-one real-world practice the source champions. It forces you to engage with the language as a living, breathing tool of human connection, rather than just an academic puzzle to be solved in the isolation of your living room.
This has been a deeply illuminating look at the mechanics of learning. To recap the journey, we started with those classic, incredibly frustrating beginner pitfalls.
The dumplings and the chickens.
Right. Mixing up the tones for dumplings and sleep, accidentally demanding entire farm animals because of a misunderstood measure word, and of course the dreaded ni-hao blackout, where your working memory just unplugs when faced with real-world speaking speeds.
Next, we unpacked the mechanics behind those failures.
Which was so validating.
Right. We explored how the adult brain actively filters out tonal data, how cognitive overload causes the system to crash, and why falling into these deep learning holes is not a sign of a lack of intelligence.
It is a direct symptom of relying on static, sterile tools. Traditional textbooks and mainstream apps strip away the speed, the cultural pragmatics, and the acoustic messiness of reality, leaving learners entirely unprepared for actual human conversation.
They keep you running on a flat treadmill and then wonder why you trip on the trail?
Exactly. And the blueprint for escaping that trap is to abandon the awkward, sterile way of learning and embrace a cycle of real-world practice. Speaking, making mistakes, and seeking out that personalized one-on-one correction to diagnose your specific structural blind spots.
So if you are out there listening to this and you have ever felt overwhelmed by information overload when trying to learn a language or really any complex new skill, let the source material be a source of comfort.
It really is comforting.
The traditional tools are often to blame for that feeling of inadequacy. Seeking out personalized diagnostics where your specific mistakes are treated as valuable, necessary data rather than shameful failures is the much smarter, more efficient path forward.
It really changes the entire paradigm. You stop hiding your weaknesses and start using them as a roadmap. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Systematically making embarrassing mistakes and being corrected is the only true way to master a language's real-life speed and nuance.
Right.
If that is true, how might actively embracing public failure actually be the greatest shortcut to becoming a confident communicator in any area of your life, not just Chinese?
That's a great question.
Next time you walk into a complex situation, maybe don't be so terrified of ordering the nap. It might just be the exact data point you need to level up.
Want to practice what you've learned today with a real Chinese teacher? You can get a free one-on-one trial lesson at eChineseLearning.com. That's it for today's episode of eChinese Learning Pod. Thanks for tuning in.